I can't take it, guys. Well.
Fair
enough. It's fair enough.
We were watching in the green room, just looking at the match, and you know, obviously we had what the official observers were watching, but I was looking at that matchup and all the aggro in them, and like you said, Collapse, such a great individual about how there's these lesser known aggro mechanics that a lot of these players tend to do, and I feel like that went a big way towards setting is not easy.
And usually I think offlane players are not the most flashy ones, right? They got the least. Even as, if you think TI, everybody was talking about Collapse. I mean, it's like you can't not notice this guy. Has so much impact on every game, and there's so much he does from the lanes, the rotations, the scaling. It was really impressive.
What do you think of the armor pickup on Night Stalker?
I think it's a build that has been popularized by Saberlight. It's the armlet and shard combination. Obviously, Night Stalker doesn't really have a way to sustain. The armlet, then when you have the shard build, all of a sudden it is great. You do get away with the armlet, which enhances your timings. You're super scary. Suddenly you solo kill a nurse during silence, kill pucks, you know, and then you get the shard to kind of. The fact that the shard was pushed to the 15 minutes timing, you know, had a big impact on the build. I think and Collapse showed how strong it can be.
Yeah. I'm really interested by this because Collapse was with the, there we go, we see his massive shard, the armlet Mars build, right? TI he popularized it at the very least, and we saw that build kind of fall out of favor because now it was too slow, the man quite fast. Now we're slowly creeping back up to that point again. Like, how does that happen? Were there many big changes that allow the meta to be slower now, to allow teams like LGD out a more efficient way of doing it?
As for the armlet, I think it's a bit Night Stalker specific. It really has a lot to do with the shard, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why. So then you have a big mid-game power spike that justifies a little bit more.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Denog, what do you think of the rest of the team? Because I know Cole the center of this team, of course, but Yadaro go back to his full form, avoiding ganks as per usual. Toronto seems to be on top.
Time, Toronto Tokyo. Like, he popped off again. It's another one of these matchups where we were saying they would have been asking him in the draft phase, like, what do you really not want to play against? Nisha saying, you know what, I can deal with this Void Spirit. Apparently not. You know, Tokyo just had another fantastic game, was able to get one of that lockdown going with the Yule Scepter, of course, into the Aghanim Scepter. So it's just a lot of great control that they had for the puck. And top lane, like, Yadaro didn't have the easiest time. I was a little bit surprised that the Doom plus Hero were able to do as much as they were to stop him. Again, Collapse, Toronto, Tokyo, they played so well that they made space to enable him to come back into the game.
I think you have a really good point with seeing this game. If you think about Team Spirit's lineup, every hero on Team Spirit has a way to touch the puck. Night Stalker, the Winter Wyvern Curse. It's a really strong tool to deal with, but it's a setup that puck can't really evade. The range is pretty high. Instant lift from Rubik, and obviously instant stun from the Monkey King, and the Yules on the Void Spirit. So the 5 heroes. So when you play as Nisha, you're playing Puck, there's 5 this one Rasta that you need to kill, and it's pretty straightforward. You have, you know, Blink, which you solo kill him. I think they did a really great job at it.
But they still picked the puck into many of these heroes, right?
I mean, the puck was picked quite early.
Oh, puck, oh, right, it was the
Wyvern Monkey, and they came up with 3 heroes that, you know, and I think honestly, I feel like Secret did a great job at drafting, but so did Team Spirit, and to me, it says something about why these teams are still the kind of last man standing, because developed into becoming the best drafting teams of.
This was an outplay. This wasn't a draft, in my opinion. There were very drafts that could have really
concepts. As you were the drafter for OG as well, and also coach beforehand, like, do these concepts come with experience? Any one that you draft theory, quote unquote, or what's the idea behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you learn them over. They have a coach, you know, Silent, former teammate of mine, that he's been around, and maybe he doesn't get as much credit because he's not as known, and he's more of a guide kind of person, but he is extremely smart about the game, and he's seen so much that he would find the answers. Obviously, it also comes from, you need to emphasize it on, it has huge impact, especially when you get players of that for all time players, you know, there's no as a together. That's the comes to the draft, the strategy. It has to be so complex that you have to keep an immense.
Like, I don't know if you become more.
So I think a lot of teams aren't really back anymore. I think there's a lot of knowledge about Dota. Whenever I'm casting, for example, I always go down a checklist of, like, do they have this? Do they have multiple avenues to be able to do this?
Too.
Yeah. So that, like, if one hero is locked out, you carry out. That's the way I think about it. But draft against each other. Don't actually each other, and then of course they've got that great level of understanding that they're going to be able to say, okay, we won this draft because of X, Y, and Z. So not only does it get you of, okay, how are we going to outwit, but also, like, what is actually good about this draft and what's going to enable it most effective it can be.
As we see the scoreboard brought to you by I want to once again ask, we used to talk about tournaments, right? We used to talk about tournament meta, the meta would set a specific tournament, and we did the meta that was up until now. Is it best of? They're so versatile and they're so diverse that they're actually adapting to each other within the same series?
Definitely, it is a real thing, and it's 100%. And I think that what's also shown is that there's been a little bit of a switch, maybe more emphasis, and it kind of always happens in these big tournaments, more emphasis being put on the overall synergy of the lineup, how it deals with the opposing lineup, and abusing things such as the phase or mid matchup. Now you end up with players that are so aware of, you know, teams that the heroes they're going to go up against and waste damage control, be an unfavorable situation, that it doesn't do the job anymore. You need to understand that, I mean, you play versus Secret, you play versus LG, there's no such thing as pumping them in 10 minutes. You know, you'll find a way to have a stable game, and then you're not worried about what happens next. How do we get to the mid game? And I feel like, you know, LDAT, Team Spirit, they've done that. They don't have these lineups that are all in kind of lineups. Secret have tried to adapt to that as they went to the game 2 and then the game 3 successfully. And, you know, as Denok said, I quite much agree. I don't think it was a drafting issue. I think it was more of an execution in game 3 especially. I mean, that bottom lane, it should not have went poorly for Secret.
Yeah, I think Rezo did a great job in the top lane as well. We saw on the scoreboard, he did end up like 1 kill, 8 deaths, sure, but he did his job. He bullied the monkey out of the lane, creating a ton of space, and then of course you have that potential to be able to go in onto someone like Toronto Tokyo, use the Doom to try and kill him, but it never got to the lane, and even mid. I feel like Toronto Tokyo outplayed Misha as well.
That's actually an opportunity for me to get a message across. You know, MMR is just a number. I really want to emphasize on that. I mean, I'll give you an example. You're losing a game, somebody's actually trying to win. You know, he's going to go in and fight, die back and fight. That's 2 deaths. And then you have the Shadow Amulet player on the other side of the map. He's not dying. He's having a flawless KDA. You know, but sometimes, you know, having, you know, dying a lot means you're trying a lot. Right. Whereas, you know, playing a very safe game, being like, oh, it's a tower, a second tower, dying. You have a positive KDA, but you're literally griefing the game. So the KDA, when you have a really high KDA, obviously it means you have a really great game, high impact. The opposite is not true.
Okay. I like that point. I mean, famously, you know, player was it I'm dying to create space, right? Paladai was known for that, for example. And he was regarded as one of the best. Go 112 every single game, didn't matter.
It really means nothing. Yeah. That, like living, and I think to maybe add a little bit on also Secret and their run, because of course, yeah, they're knocked out and you know, it's bitter and everything, but at the same time, I think they had an incredible showing and an incredible run.
Yeah, happy about that at any kind of lane.
Of course. Let's remember the run a little bit. We have backs here to remind our viewers of short memory loss what happened the previous days. Here we go. Secret, along with OG, were the 2 teams that made it directly through from the group stages into the semifinals, and they've both been knocked. Perhaps, you know, that extra warm-up, who knows, that actually helped out. PS, Enigma, Galaxy, Roll, Never Give Up, and Team Spirit with 4 teams made it through from group stages to the first stage, and the Spirit and LGD won both matchups that they've played. So they're hot, they have momentum. That is always a factor. I remember when I talked to when the whole DPC battle was starting, and like how teams are getting directly to the playoffs of the main. Teams that got there, Thunder Awaken, for example, one of them, and they all told me, I actually wish I didn't get into playoffs directly. They all wanted to play group stages because they thought that was much better. Thought that actually improved their Dota. Do you resonate with that sentiment?
Definitely. I mean, I think skipping group stages is like having a format where some teams are going to skip the group stage. I'm not a fan of it. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I hate it. I think it's really bad for teams because then they don't get the experience. Playing against all these teams, you know, kind of learning, it's just taken away from them. It's like you warm up for a game and then the others are just like locked in a dark room. They don't get to see anything warm up. It's actually unfair, you know. In that case, all the teams here got to play the group stage. They got to play, you know, which is a lot. There was 1 series left for the team that dominated their groups. I don't know that it had that much impact, especially all the teams used to have practice games between teams that were already knocked out and that, you know, knew that
they still really solid teams as well.
So that is actually, it's not official games. If anything, it's even better because to try a lot of strategies, you know, experiment a little bit more instead of being put under the spotlight in brackets where you can't really maybe play around as much.
So it only shows the strength of PSG, LGD, and Team
Yeah. Like they didn't get as long of a break. They had to just keep their nose to the grindstone and just push it on through. Again, it's just the power of those great minds. Of course, Silent, like presented and underappreciated by a lot of people. Wait, he isn't underappreciated. Everyone knows how good of a coach he can be, but
that's why I mentioned him so much, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's going to come down to maybe it's that battle of wits rather than because both of these teams they can just play it.
Hopefully, TrueSight can shed some light on what Silent does backstage. You know what his. I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, and maybe then it would change the West perception or just general Dota perception of who he is. The wrong perception. I think people just don't know him.
Exactly. I mean, it just comes because there's so many Dota youngins these days. You know, they come in TI7, TI8. They miss the days where Silent was considered one of the days that you've seen. Like they stayed with Rocks Kids when you came by. Actually,
he was incredible.
He was incredible, right? But it's always good to remind people not just what these coaches do, not what these people play and how well they. Which is why we have, we have an actual trophy shot. That was amazing. I thought we were going to pan out. This is a trophy. It looks like our trophy, but this is, and we've all touched it. Sorry, production. We've all touched it, and it is actual real trophy. It feels really nice.
It's heavy.
It's heavy. We were kind of concerned about some being able to carry it, but don't worry. We have CL8 and Silent will be the ones to lift up.
It's that heavy.
Wow.
It is serious business.
Okay. Oh, that's only you can say that.
I can say it twice too.
Oh, here we go.
No, they're the same.
They're the same. Okay.
Did you hear that, Toronto? You can't say it. Anyway, this trophy is what it's for, and it's going to be a really, really exciting matchup. So let's talk about it a little bit as we get ready for that and get ready for, of course, the players walking down stage and everything. Dano, what do you think teams? So has been a versatile team, right? They've found literally 5 strategies I think in this tournament. Team Spirit, they've stuck to their guns a little bit more, right? Bird is a bit stronger. What do you think LG will try to do against Team Spirit to break their strategy?
Anything that they can disrupt Team Spirit's strong lanes, I think is going to go a long way, giving LGD. Honestly, both teams are so good at team. There's little differences that are going to be able to make the changes there. It might be on the back of Maposh getting a clear ward off that's not identified. It might have, someone like Xinkyu just popping off in a team fight. Cat consistently does on heroes like as tiny as Earth. Could go either way. I can't make a prediction. I think it's going to be another series like the rest of the playoffs that goes the full 3 games.
I hope so. And we all want more Dota. I think that Team Spirit a little bit, right, to experiment with Secret, and they went to, honestly, LGD draft. That's what it looked like to us. Do you feel like they're going to go they're not going to strategy just against LGD?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between now and I feel like at TI, they were in the driving seat. They were the team that figured the meta the best. LGD, they had some really strong strategies, but I think Team Spirit, they were about what they were doing. They had these Marses, these Maxes, tried, evolved a lot around what plays, and they were super cool with it. And LGD, they had to really scratch their heads on how do we get them out of that comfort zone, and they did not manage to do so. I feel like here it might actually be a little bit of the opposite. I feel like Team Spirit, at the beginning of the tournament, they were maybe even a little bit confused, and now they're starting to pick up some steam on understanding what works for them better, and it shows. But for instance, in game 1, it was a big flop. Like, you could tell that this was a draft they don't know how to execute, were really uncomfortable with, because they had a stable early game. It was them to kind of execute. I feel like LGD, that doesn't happen with them anymore for this tournament. They seem to me, I think LGD will be in the driving seat, throwing stuff at Team Spirit, and I'm just looking at how well can Team Spirit match up against that.
Okay, we'll have to see. The next series will take a rush break, right? As you guys know, they're in the driving seat. We're going to press the brakes and come back with the next series of the day.